The rusted gates stand twisted and broken, hanging from brick pillars that have watched over this corner of Baltimore for nearly 90 years. Beyond them, the skeletal remains of what was once a cathedral of American whiskey production rise against the gray Maryland sky. This is the Baltimore Pure Rye Distillery, later known simply as Seagram's Baltimore facility, and its story is one of ambition, empire, and ultimately, abandonment. The year is 1933. America has just emerged from the dark teen years that nearly destroyed the nation's distilling industry. But for one man watching from across the Canadian border, the end of Prohibition represented not a conclusion, but an opportunity of staggering proportions. His name was Samuel Bronfman, and he was about to build the largest liquor empire the world had ever seen. Samuel Bronfman's journey to becoming the Whiskey King began far from the distilleries of North America. Born in 1889 aboard a ship carrying his family from the pogroms of Tsarist Russia to the frozen plains of Saskatchewan, young Sam grew up in a world of struggle and survival. His father, Yakil, had been a successful tobacco farmer in their homeland, but the Canadian prairies proved unforgiving to tobacco cultivation. The family adapted, as immigrants do, moving to Brandon, Manitoba, and entering the hotel business. It was in these prairie hotels that young Sam made an observation that would change his life. Watching his father struggle with the various aspects of hotel management, Sam noticed something crucial: the bar made more profits than everything else combined. That single observation planted the seed of what would become a global empire. By 1924, Samuel Bronfman had established the Distillers Corporation in Montreal. His timing was impeccable. While the United States writhed under Prohibition's grip, Canada had already repealed its own temperance laws. Bronfman found himself in the perfect position to supply American bootleggers, operating within the letter of Canadian law while watching his fortune grow with each shipment that crossed the border. But Bronfman was different from the typical Prohibition-era liquor dealer. While others cut corners, watered down their products, and chased quick profits, Sam Bronfman obsessed over quality. He understood something fundamental about human nature. When Prohibition ended, Americans would remember who had sold them swill and who had sold them quality. He was building not just for the Prohibition years, but for the decades that would follow. In 1928, Bronfman made a move that would define his empire. He acquired Joseph E. Seagram and Sons of Waterloo, Ontario, from the heirs of Joseph Seagram. The Seagram name already carried weight in the industry, associated with quality and tradition. Bronfman wisely kept the name, merging his operations into what became Distillers Corporation Seagrams Limited. While his competitors lobbied the government for protection against what they saw as unfair competition, Bronfman was already thinking several moves ahead. When Prohibition finally collapsed in 1933, most American distilleries scrambled to rebuild from nothing. Their stocks were depleted, their facilities crumbling, their expertise scattered. Seagram's had none of these problems. Bronfman had warehouses full of aged whiskey in Canada, ready to flood the American market the moment the opportunity arose. He didn't just enter the market, he conquered it. The Baltimore Pure Rye Distillery was one of many built across the United States during that golden period of post-Prohibition reconstruction. In the Dundalk section of Baltimore, an area that had only 8,000 residents at the time, 2 distilleries rose from the ground. Maryland had been known for its bold and spicy whiskey since the 1800s, thanks to its soft water and superior rye. The Baltimore Pure Rye Distilling Company was operated by its president, William E. Cricker, whose photo and signature appeared on every bottle as a mark of authenticity. Meanwhile, Bronfman was building his crown jewel in Louisville, Kentucky. The Seagram complex, officially opened in May 1937 during Kentucky Derby Week, drew crowds of 71,000 people. Bronfman claimed it was the largest distillery in the world, and he might well have been right. The facility was a fortress of whiskey production, featuring elegant Art Deco architecture that disguised its industrial purpose. 17 massive brick-faced production buildings and warehouses fanned out from a central office building that became known locally as the Seagram Palace. The attention to detail was extraordinary. All buildings were connected by underground passageways, keeping the movement of workers and whiskey barrels hidden from public view. The 8 6-story warehouses were fireproof structures built with reinforced concrete frames, capable of holding 450,000 barrels of aging whiskey. Bold bands of cast stone wrapped around the buildings at various levels, creating a crenulating effect that made them look like medieval treasuries, which in a sense, they were. The landscape was cultivated into a wide green campus, complete with mature trees, grass, and walking paths, more reminiscent of a university than a factory. A railroad serviced the rear of the property, with several sidings lacing through the site to move product efficiently. Nothing was left to chance, nothing was done halfway. This was Samuel Bronfman's vision made concrete and brick. By the 1950s, Seagram had become one of the world's largest beverage alcohol firms. The company's portfolio included names that would become synonymous with quality: Chivas Regal, Crown Royal, Seven Crown, Calvert, Vaux, and many others. Bronfman's marketing genius had made drinking whiskey respectable in post-Prohibition America, targeting upscale consumers with brands that spoke to quality and sophistication. But Samuel Bronfman ran his empire like a Renaissance prince. He maneuvered his brothers out of the company, keeping only the youngest, Alan, whom he could intimidate. His nephews were ultimately deprived of any role in Seagram. At the executive level, he relied on loyal cronies and regularly expelled managers who might challenge his authority. He was, in the words of Businessweek, a volatile, shrewd, and highly individualistic leader whose technical knowledge and financial acumen remained unchallenged. The empire Bronfman built extended far beyond bourbon and rye. In Waterloo, Ontario, the historic Seagram plant became the production site for Crown Royal, a blend Bronfman personally developed in 1939 to mark the visit to Canada of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Though the whiskey traveled across Canada on the royal trains, there is no evidence the monarchs ever tasted it. But the association with royalty served its marketing purpose perfectly. Bronfman's obsession with quality bordered on the fanatical. Jim Rutledge, who joined Seagram's Calvert Distillery in Louisville in 1966, remembered the intensity decades later. Every aspect of production had to be perfect. Inspectors watched every bottling line. Any bottle with a slightly crooked label or a wrinkle was pulled off and redone. For Larry Ebersold, who joined in 1972 at Seagram's Lawrenceburg, Indiana plant, the lessons were equally formative. The expectation was unwavering. Follow the processes and make good whiskey. This culture of excellence created what amounted to a distiller's university. Generations of whiskey makers trained under Seagram's rigorous standards, learning techniques and processes that would shape the industry for decades. The company literally wrote the books on beverage alcohol production, technical manuals that became industry Bibles. But even empires built on such solid foundations can crumble. The cracks began to show in the late 1960s and 70s. Sales of whiskey declined as consumer tastes shifted. Seagram, which had operated multiple distilleries across Kentucky and beyond, began to consolidate. The Baltimore facility, where William E. Cricker had died in 1957, was purchased by Seagram's Corporation and used to produce Paul Jones and Four Roses brands. But the writing was on the wall. When Seagram closed smaller Kentucky plants, they faced a unique problem: how to maintain the same flavor profiles with fewer facilities. Components of Four Roses bourbon had been made at 5 different locations. The solution was ingenious. They developed multiple proprietary yeast strains that could mimic the character of the closed facilities. Paired with different mash bills, this gave them 10 distinct recipes to work with, allowing them to recreate the complexity that had required multiple distilleries. The Louisville complex closed in 1983 and sold it in pieces. The Baltimore facility had already ceased operations, beginning its long slide into abandonment. What had once been temples of American industry were now becoming industrial graveyards. Meanwhile, the Bronfman family was navigating its own transition. Samuel Bronfman died in 1971, leaving the empire to his sons Edgar and Charles. Edgar the elder became chairman and chief executive officer, running U.S. operations from New York. Charles directed Seagram's Canadian business. The brothers introduced more professional management systems, but at the strategic level, family members continued to play the crucial role. The Baltimore distillery sat vacant through the 1980s and 90s, its massive brick buildings slowly deteriorating. Historic designation was sought for the structures, but instead they were left to rot. The underground tunnels that had once moved barrels in secret now filled with water and debris. The Art Deco limestone detailing that had made the buildings beautiful began to crumble. In the Waterloo plant, a different fate awaited. Samuel Bronfman's beloved historic facility had nearly been closed in 1953, but he reconsidered after visiting, recognizing that it was indeed a jewel. The plant continued operating through the 1970s under his son's leadership, but when demand for whiskey decreased worldwide, Seagram decided in 1990 to close Waterloo and move Crown Royal production to the Gimli Distillery. In 1993, a fire destroyed most of the Waterloo facility, sealing its fate. But the real disaster for the Bronfman empire was still to come, and it would be delivered not by changing market conditions or fire, but by family ambition and miscalculation. Edgar Bronfman's son, Edgar Jr., ascended to leadership of Seagram in the 1980s. Unlike his grandfather, who had built the business through obsessive attention to the spirits industry, Edgar Jr. had dreams of entertainment empire. He had worked as a film producer and songwriter in his youth, and those passions never left him. In the 1990s, Edgar Jr. began steering Seagram away from its core business. He sold the company's highly profitable stake in DuPont, worth billions, and poured the money into Universal Studios, Universal Music Group, and Polygram Records. The strategy split the Bronfman family. Some supported his radical vision. Others, including his uncle Charles, viewed it as betrayal of everything Samuel Bronfman had built. The skeptics would be proven tragically right. In October 1999, Edgar Jr. squeezed a meeting into a Paris vacation. He sat down with Jean-Marie Messier, a compact bundle of energy and ego, who was transforming a French water and sewage utility called Vivendi into a media and communications colossus. The two men recognized in each other a shared vision of an internet-driven future dominated by a few smart global media companies. On June 20, 2000, the deal was struck. Seagram would merge with Vivendi in an all-stock transaction valued at $34 billion. The Bronfmans would receive Vivendi shares fixed at $77.35 per share, retaining 24% of the merged company. The precious liquor assets, the core business that Samuel Bronfman had spent his life building, were sold off to Pernod Ricard and Diageo. The timing could not have been worse. By the time the transaction closed in December 2000, the dot-com bubble had burst. Media and internet stocks were tanking. The Bronfmans watched in horror as their Vivendi shares, which they had expected to be worth $77, dropped to $54 even before the deal closed. Jean-Marie Messier, now in control, went on a buying spree that Edgar Bronfman Sr. would later describe as being like a kid in a candy store who didn't care what the price was. From December 2000 until Messier's departure 18 months later, Vivendi added an astonishing $1 billion worth of debt per month. The company bought everything in sight, a dizzying media and telecom spending spree that left the Bronfmans and other investors helpless. By 2002, Vivendi Universal was on life support. The share price had collapsed from $77 to less than $25. The Bronfman family fortune, which had been valued at nearly $7 billion, had been decimated. Messier was forced to resign, but the damage was done. In 2003, with the Seagram company gone, Vivendi auctioned the Seagram art collection to pay its debts. Charles Bronfman, Edgar Jr.'s uncle, would later call it a disaster, a Greek tragedy. The family that had built one of the world's great business empires, that had survived Prohibition and the Great Depression, that had dominated the global spirits industry for generations, had lost everything in less than 2 years. Back in Baltimore, the abandoned distillery stood as a physical monument to this corporate tragedy. Urban explorers began to infiltrate the site in the 2000s, drawn by the haunting beauty of industrial decay. The massive brick buildings with their Art Deco details still visible beneath the grime and graffiti became a photographer's paradise and a danger zone. In 2012, a 19-year-old exploring the site fell 60 feet to his death when a catwalk collapsed beneath him. 2 years later, a 24-year-old man died in similar circumstances. Fires broke out on the property repeatedly after 2008, threatening nearby houses and angering the community. In 2017, when another fire critically injured a 40-year-old man, a judge finally mandated demolition of a warehouse on the property. Within days, the ruins of the distillery were demolished. The underground tunnels that had once moved barrels in secret were filled in. The Art Deco limestone details were crushed to rubble. The brick walls that had stood for over 80 years came crashing down. The site that had once produced whiskey for a nation became the foundation for a townhouse development. The Louisville facility met a different but equally ignominious fate. The elegant main office building, the Seagram Palace that had welcomed 71,000 visitors in 1937, now houses Dismas Charities. The outlying buildings had been subdivided and repurposed for various uses. Chain-link fencing cuts through what was once a unified campus. The underground passageways remain, but they connect buildings owned by 6 different companies across 12 individual parcels. In Waterloo, the barrel warehouses that survived the 1993 fire found new life as the Seagram Lofts, luxury condominiums that preserve the distinctive yellow brick and small windows that once ventilated aging spirits. They serve as landmarks in the uptown area, visible from Caroline Street South, reminding passers-by of the industrial heritage that shaped the city. The Lawrenceburg, Indiana facility, the Rossville Union Distillery, that Samuel Bronfman purchased in 1933 as his first American acquisition, continues to operate under new ownership. MGP Ingredients now runs the facility, producing whiskey for various clients and maintaining some of the technical expertise that Seagram had cultivated. The building still sits on the same aquifer that drew distillers to Lawrenceburg in the 1800s, using 56-degree water low in sulfur and iron, high in calcium and limestone filtered. Some of Seagram's brands survived the empire's collapse. Crown Royal, that blend Samuel Bronfman personally developed for royalty, is now owned by Diageo and has been extended into a portfolio of different releases. Chivas Regal remains a premium Scotch whisky brand. The famous 95.5 rye mash bill that Seagram developed to substitute for closed distillery flavors became a cornerstone of modern rye whisky used by numerous brands. But the Seagram name itself, that brand Samuel Bronfman had so wisely preserved when he acquired it in 1928, has largely faded from prominence. Seagram's gin continues, owned by other companies, displaying the crest that has represented a commitment to authenticity since 1939. But the Seagram Company Limited, the global empire that once dominated the spirits world, exists only in history books and business school case studies. The Bronfman family, while not left impoverished, saw their fortune seriously diminished. Edgar Jr. went on to become CEO and chairman of Warner Music Group, where he earned some redemption by successfully navigating the music industry's transition to digital distribution. But the shadow of the Vivendi disaster would follow him. In 2011, a French court found him guilty of insider trading during his time at Vivendi, handing down a 15-month suspended sentence and a €5 million fine. The story of Seagram's rise and fall contains lessons that echo far beyond the spirits industry. Samuel Bronfman built an empire through obsessive attention to quality, understanding his market, and thinking in generations rather than quarters. He created a culture of excellence that trained industry leaders and set standards that persist today. His technical knowledge and financial acumen were unchallenged, his vision clear, his execution ruthless but effective. But he also built an empire as a personal domain, maneuvering family members aside, concentrating power in his own hands, and creating a structure where family loyalty mattered more than professional management. When he died, he left his sons an empire, but also a burden. The expectation that Bronfmans would run Seagram, regardless of whether that served the business best. Edgar and Charles sustained the business through changing times, introducing more professional management while maintaining family control at the strategic level. But when Edgar Sr. appointed his son Edgar Jr. to leadership without consulting Charles, he set in motion the final act of the tragedy. Edgar Jr.'s vision of a media empire was not inherently wrong, but it required abandoning the core competencies that had made Seagram great. The timing, with the dot-com bubble at its peak, proved catastrophic, the abandoned distilleries that dot the American landscape, from Baltimore to Louisville to Waterloo, stand as monuments to an empire that once seemed invincible. Their empty windows and crumbling walls remind us that no business, no matter how dominant, is immune to the forces of change, family dynamics, and strategic miscalculation. If you're enjoying this deep dive into forgotten industrial history and the rise and fall of American business empires, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We're constantly uncovering these hidden stories, exploring abandoned sites, and connecting the dots between past and present. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. The workers who once walked through those underground tunnels in Louisville, who climbed the stairs of the Baltimore facility, who monitored the aging barrels in Waterloo, were part of something larger than themselves. They were the hands and minds that executed Samuel Bronfman's vision of quality whiskey for the masses. Many of them learned their craft so well that when Seagram closed, they took that knowledge to other distilleries, spreading the Seagram way throughout the industry. Jim Rutledge, who started at Seagram's Calvert Distillery and later became master distiller at Four Roses, used the technical foundation he learned at Seagram to revolutionize how those 10 recipes could be deployed. Instead of just blending all 10 to hit a single flavor target, he used individual yeast and mash bill combinations to create variety and originality. The Seagram training made that possible. At MGP in Indiana, the lessons learned from recreating closed distillery flavors led to innovation that continues today. The famous 95.5 rye mash bill, developed out of necessity when Seagram consolidated operations, became one of the most widely used recipes in modern American whiskey. Distillers who learned their craft under Seagram's rigorous standards continue to influence the industry decades after the company's collapse. The physical structures may be gone or repurposed, but the knowledge, the standards, the relentless pursuit of quality that Samuel Bronfman instilled in his empire survives. In that sense, Seagram never truly died. It transformed, dispersed its DNA throughout the industry, and continues to shape how whiskey is made today. Standing where the Baltimore facility once stood, where townhouses now occupy ground that once held massive copper stills and aging warehouses, it's difficult to imagine the scale of what existed here. The smell of fermenting grain that once filled the air has been replaced by the scent of fresh-cut grass and suburban normalcy. The railroad sidings that brought in grain and shipped out cases of finished product have been paved over and forgotten. But history has a way of persisting, even when the physical evidence has been erased. The Baltimore Pure Rye Distillery and the Seagram empire it became part of represents a chapter in American industrial history that deserves to be remembered. It's a story of immigrant ambition, of seeing opportunity where others saw disaster, of building something that would outlast its creator, even if not in the form he intended. Samuel Bronfman died in 1971, having built the largest spirits company in the world. He left behind a fortune, a family dynasty, and brands that had become household names. He could not have imagined that less than 30 years after his death, the company he spent his life building would be sold off in pieces, its distilleries abandoned or repurposed, its name reduced to a historical footnote. The question that haunts anyone studying the Seagram story is whether it had to end this way. Could different decisions have preserved the empire? Should Edgar Sr. have implemented a more professional management structure instead of handing control to his son? Should Edgar Jr. have been prevented from pursuing his entertainment vision? Should the family have rejected the Vivendi deal? Business historians argue these counterfactuals endlessly, but perhaps they miss the larger point. Empires rise and fall. Industries transform. What seemed like an unshakable foundation in 1950 turns out to be quicksand by 2000. The very qualities that made Samuel Bronfman successful, his autocratic control, his distrust of outside management, his concentration of power, planted the seeds of the empire's eventual collapse. The Bronfman family story mirrors other great American business dynasties. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, all built empires that eventually fragmented or transformed beyond recognition. The difference is that oil, steel, and railroads were industries with longer staying power than distilled spirits. Or perhaps those families simply made better succession decisions. What remains undeniable is the scale of what was lost. The Seagram empire at its peak represented not just a business but a culture, a standard of excellence, a training ground for talent, and a source of pride for the Bronfman family in Canada. Its dissolution represented one of the great value destructions in business history. Billions of dollars of shareholder value evaporated in a matter of months. The townhouses that now stand where the Baltimore Distillery once operated house families who probably have no idea what came before. The children who play in those yards don't know that beneath their feet, underground tunnels once snaked through the property, carrying barrels of aging whiskey from building to building. The parents who park in those driveways don't realize that the ground they drive over once supported massive copper stills that could produce thousands of gallons of spirit per day. This erasure of industrial history happens constantly in America. Old factories become luxury lofts. Abandoned distilleries become townhouse developments. The machinery is scrapped, the buildings demolished, and within a generation the memory fades. Only photographs remain. Black and white images of men in workwear standing beside gleaming equipment, or architectural drawings showing the elaborate systems that made production possible. The few Seagram buildings that survive in altered form serve as reminders of a different era of American industry, when companies built structures designed to last centuries, when craftsmanship mattered in construction as much as in product, when a distillery could be designed as a campus with aesthetic as well as functional considerations. The Louisville complex, with its Art Deco details and fortress-like appearance, represented Samuel Bronfman's vision of what a distillery should be: secure, efficient, beautiful, and built for the ages. The fact that those buildings still stand, even repurposed and subdivided, suggests his vision had merit. They outlasted the company that built them. The human cost of Seagram's collapse often gets overlooked in discussions of stock prices and merger disasters. Thousands of workers lost their jobs as facilities closed. Entire communities that had grown up around Seagram operations saw their economic foundations disappear. The suppliers, the truckers, the barrel makers, the label printers, all the ancillary businesses that depended on Seagram's operations faced their own crises as the empire fragmented. Some workers were absorbed by the companies that acquired Seagram's assets. Diageo and Pernod Ricard needed people who understood how to make Crown Royal and Chivas Regal. But many others found themselves unemployed in their 50s and 60s, too old to easily find new work, too young to retire, their specialized knowledge suddenly valueless in a market that no longer needed it. The cultural impact extends beyond economics. Seagram helped make whiskey respectable in post-Prohibition America. The company's marketing emphasized quality, sophistication, and social status. Drinking Chivas Regal or Crown Royal meant something different than drinking cheaper alternatives. Seagram created aspirational brands that people worked toward affording, that they gave as gifts, that they displayed proudly in their homes. When those brands changed hands, when they became assets in corporate portfolios rather than products of a family-owned empire, something intangible was lost. The new owners maintained quality and heritage, but the connection to the Bronfman vision, to Samuel's obsessive standards, to the culture of excellence he created, that connection weakened with each transaction. The irony is that Samuel Bronfman spent much of his life seeking respectability, trying to escape the shadow of his Prohibition-era activities, building a legitimate business empire that would be admired rather than merely tolerated. He largely succeeded. By the time of his death, Seagram was regarded as one of the world's great companies, and Bronfman himself as a business genius and philanthropist. Yet within 3 decades of his death, the empire was gone, sold off in a deal so disastrous that it became a business school case study in everything not to do. The Bronfman name, once synonymous with quality spirits and business acumen, became associated with one of history's worst mergers. The respectability Samuel worked so hard to achieve was tarnished by his grandson's miscalculation. As we stand in the final moments of this story, looking back across nearly a century from Samuel Bronfman's arrival in Canada to the demolition of the Baltimore distillery, certain themes emerge clearly. Ambition can build empires, but it can also destroy them. Quality and excellence create value, but that value can be squandered through poor strategic decisions. Family dynasties carry both advantages and terrible vulnerabilities. The abandoned distilleries, the repurposed warehouses, the demolished facilities, they all tell the same story. Nothing lasts forever, no matter how solid it seems, no matter how carefully it's built. The whiskey that aged in those barrels has long since been drunk or poured down drains during demolition. The workers who made it have retired or passed away. The company that produced it exists only in archives and memories, but the impact lingers. The standards Seagram set influenced the entire industry. The yeast strains developed to replicate closed distillery flavors are still in use. The technical manuals Seagram produced still inform best practices. The distillers trained in Seagram facilities brought that knowledge to other companies, spreading the gospel of quality throughout the industry. Perhaps that's the real legacy of the Seagram Empire. Not the buildings that stood or the fortunes that were made and lost, but the knowledge that was created and shared, the standards that were set and maintained. The proof that an immigrant family from Russia could build something that would change American industry. If you've made it this far in our exploration of Seagram's forgotten empire, I want to thank you for taking this journey with us. If you found this story compelling, if you learned something about American industrial history, if you're curious about what other abandoned empires we might explore next, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. We're building a community of people who believe that these forgotten stories matter, that understanding how empires rise and fall teaches us something important about our own time. Join us, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next investigation. The townhouses in Baltimore stand quiet in the evening light. Families gather for dinner, children do homework. The normal rhythms of suburban life play out where once the smell of fermenting grain filled the air and the rumble of machinery shook the ground. The past has been paved over, built upon, forgotten by most. But for those who know where to look, for those who understand what came before, the ghosts of Seagram's empire still whisper their story. A story of ambition and excellence, of empire and collapse, of one man's vision that outlasted him, but not by as much as he would have hoped. The Whiskey King is dead, his empire is scattered, his distilleries are abandoned or repurposed. But the story, the extraordinary story, of how a Russian immigrant built the world's largest spirits company and how his heirs lost it all, that story endures. It endures in the brands that survive under new ownership. It endures in the distillers who learned their craft in Seagram facilities. It endures in the few buildings that still stand, bearing Art Deco details that hint at a more ambitious age. And it endures here in this telling, a reminder that every abandoned building has a story. Every corporate collapse has human costs. Every empire, no matter how mighty, carries within it the seeds of its own eventual end. The forgotten distillery of Baltimore was never really forgotten, not entirely. As long as someone remembers, as long as someone tells the story, as long as someone understands what was built there and what was lost, it lives on.